Stephen, thank you. Appreciate it. Leading worship for us today. It was just beautiful. You know, people often ask, what does God want? And as he was declaring in that song, we see the same truth evidenced in Scripture, and that is he doesn't want us to do stuff for him. Ultimately, what he wants is he wants our heart. That's what he said to David when David said, God, I'll do all these things. He said, David, what I desire is a pure and a contrite heart. That I will not despise. So when we get that right, everything comes into line. But we need to get that right. We need to make sure that our hearts are rightly aligned with God. Wow, that was good. I need those times. I just love music. How many of you just love music? I mean, it speaks to my soul. I'm one of those guys who's going down the road, with the radio cranked. You ever have those people pull up beside you, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is obnoxious. Who is this? You look over. It's probably me. Just letting you know, it's like, yeah, this is great. Just loving it. Because music speaks to our soul, pierces those layers and levels. And so just very, very excited to be with you today. We're going to continue our series called Tested. Tested. And this whole series was put together because what we want to do is not just walk through actions, but really test those actions and make sure that they're what God intended them to be. And so this idea of tested is that our godliness would be tested. So we looked at 3 different areas already in 3 different character studies. The first one was conviction. When our conviction is tested. The second one was trust. When our trust is tested. The third one was perseverance. When our perseverance is tested, and that was last week with Job. This week, we're going to look at another character, and that's the life of Joseph, and we're going to look at when our integrity is tested. When our integrity is tested. Have you ever done a time study? I don't know if you've ever done this. It's very interesting. A time study is this, where you record every minute of the day how you use it. And you do that for 7 days in a row. And it's very difficult to write down, this 15 minutes, I did this, at least 15-minute increments. You're writing down everything. So that you can truly assess how I use my time. I've done this. And I'll tell you, there's 2 things. Number 1, it's enlightening. Number 2, it's alarming. That we realize you're like, are you kidding me? That's how I use this much time? And we need moments where we assess things, where we evaluate them. Otherwise, our perceptions will tell us probably what we want to hear. Our evaluation will show us oftentimes what we don't want to see. So what we want to do is this whole idea of tested is to really put in the fire these things to be able to assess these areas of our lives so that we can be able to honor God with our life, with our faith, with our speech, with everything that we are. So we're going to look at the life of Joseph. Let me give you a little backstory because we're going to start in chapter 39. But to give you just a little history, he's the golden child. You know the golden child? The one in the family that, always mom and dad seem to love him more. Always gets the preferential treatment. Well, Joseph, it says that Jacob loved him more than the other sons. We also see that God's hand was upon him from an early age. That he gave him dreams and visions that he shared. And, his brothers were like, Joseph, we love you for this. No, they were like, not just critical, they were angry at him. They were jealous of him. They were resentful of him. And so as all of this begins to unfold, the father decides to do something amazing. He made him a coat of many colors to describe his love, his affection, his value for his son Joseph. So Joseph, his brothers are out working in the field. He wears his coat and he goes out to see his brothers. And as he goes, his brothers' relationship was so toxic that they wanted to kill him. So they concocted this plan that what they were going to do is they were going to kill him, and then say a lion or some type of an animal came by and just, they killed him, and this is what was left. You know, some blood on his coat of many colors. They didn't tell the father that. And they got to that moment and they couldn't bring themselves to do it. At least the oldest brother decided to come up with another plan. He goes, let's not kill him. This is where genius comes in. You know, when you're going down the highway in the wrong direction, you got a lot of bad thoughts happening. So, but he thinks this is brilliant. It's like the light goes on. Let's not kill him. We'll sell him. We'll sell him into slavery. That's what we'll do. And all the other guys were like, genius. And so that's what they did. They actually sold their youngest brother into slavery, and we pick up the story in Genesis 39. I want you to follow along, and we're going to talk about integrity. Listen to what he says. Now Joseph, verse 1, chapter 39. Now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord had caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight, and attended him, and he made him overseer of his house, and he put him in charge of all that he had. Listen to this. From the time that he made him overseer of his house and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was upon all that he had in house and in field. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and because of him, he had no concern about anything but the food he ate. It's always good to have somebody that's just taking care of everything. Joseph was that guy. Potiphar didn't have to worry about a thing. And then the test begins. Here we go. He says, now Joseph was a handsome in form and appearance, and after a time his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph and said, lie with me. Now that's a different statement. They're not talking about fibbing together. She's saying, go to bed with me. But he refused, and he said to his master's wife, behold, because of me, my master has no concern about anything in the house, and he has put everything that he has in my charge. He is not greater in this house than I, nor has he held back anything from me except you, because you are his wife. It's a big statement. Listen to it. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against, not Potiphar, and sin against God? As he spoke to Joseph day after day, he would not listen to her, to lie beside her, or to be with her. But one day, when he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house were there in the house, she caught him by the garment, saying, lie with me. But he left his garment in her hand, and he fled out to get out of the house. And as soon as she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled out of the house, she called to the men of her household and said to them, see, he has brought among us a Hebrew to laugh at us. He came in to lie with me and cried out with a loud voice. And as soon as he heard that, I lifted up my voice and cried out. He left his garment beside me and fled and got out of the house. Talk about a fabricated story, right? Then she laid up his garment by her until his master came home, and she told him the same story, saying, the Hebrew servant whom you had brought among us came in to laugh at me. But as soon as I lifted up my voice and cried, he left his garment beside me and fled out of the house. And as soon as his master heard the words, his wife spoke to him, this is the way that your servant has treated me. His anger was kindled. Of course. And Joseph's master took him, put him in prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in prison. I want you to listen to the last verse. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. Some observations in this passage that teach us about integrity, and I want you to hear these because they apply to us. And like I said last week, Job, the story of Job is not just a story of Job, it's a story to instruct us, to help us see ourselves. The same thing with Joseph. It's not just history. It's a story that God intended in the Bible so that we could learn from his life and from his experience. So as we talk about integrity, let me define it for you so you understand it. It's who we are and what we do when no one is looking. Some people would say it's what we do when no one is looking. I think it's bigger than that. It's who we are and what we do when no one is looking. You want to learn a lot about yourself? Find out about your integrity. Who you are and what you would do when no one is looking. So there's three things here I want you to see. First, that our integrity is tested when faced with a decision to do something we know isn't right. Our choices tell a story. Every choice we make, there's a reason for it. Our choices over time tell a story. The very essence of who we are and what we value as people. There's something in verse 10 I want to point out. Some insights here with Joseph. And it says that this woman, Potiphar's wife, came in day after day and challenged him with this thought. Come lie with me. Come to bed with me. It wasn't a one-time occurrence. It was day after day after day. And the one thing that we learn about choices in life is that they're daily. Have you ever had that moment in life where you actually make an amazing decision and you know you honored God and you're like, yes, I did it. I did the right thing for the right reason. I'm sure God is honored with that. And you feel really good. I've been there. Feels awesome. The only problem with that is you have to face another decision the next day. And then the next day you go, well, I didn't make the right decision. So it's this reality that we will be faced with decisions day after day after day. And there's going to be something that causes us to make a decision one way or the other that fuels and guides our decision making. Joseph was faced with these choices day after day, as you and I are faced with choices day after day, challenging the very essence of our integrity, who we are and what we do when no one's looking. The second thing is this: our integrity is tested when our actions are thought to be unseen or unknown. Verse 11 says that Potiphar's wife tells him, listen, everybody's gone. It's just you and me, baby. And Joseph, let me tell you, in this situation, it wasn't like, well, if you were only more, better looking or something. No, I'm sure she was a beautiful woman. And he's thinking this is a pleasure that many men long to enjoy. And many women long to enjoy. And here he has this moment when no one is there. No one would know. And he's faced with a decision. And he chooses to do what is right. Why? before God. You see, I want you to hear this, the real test of integrity. What you would do if nobody would ever find out. If you knew you would never be caught, what would you do? Listen to a couple things. I wrote a couple things down because I want you to hear them. What would you look at if you knew no one would ever find out? Where would you go if you knew no one would ever find out? What would you do if you knew no one would ever find out? You see, integrity isn't about performing in front of others. It's when no one would know. We learn a whole lot of who we really are. And is there a battle? Is there a battle that I've failed as much as I've succeeded? Absolutely. But this is the very essence of our integrity, our heart posture, the essence of who we are. You see, Joseph wasn't worried about Potiphar finding out. He really wasn't. He wasn't worried even about Potiphar's wife. It says that he didn't want to sin against God. See, part of our integrity, this is what we have to understand. It's not about making somebody in this world happy or pleased. It's about knowing this. No matter where I am, no matter what I'm facing, the greatest thing that I want to do is honor God in all things. Can I stand before him knowing with clear conscience that I've done what would honor him above anything else? Integrity. Integrity. The truth is, someone always knows. You ever done something and nobody knew? Oh, come on, we all have, right? We done something and nobody knew. The truth is, you know. And God knows. You want to talk about a prison to be in? Is try to protect that secret and even know in your soul who you are. People speak of you and they say that's who they are, and you know you, and you go, no, I know who I am. It's a beautiful thing to be able to stand there and go, if the world condemn me, I have one thing that I can rest in, that between God and I have my integrity. I have my integrity. The last thing, our integrity is tested when we determine our choices based on an outcome rather than what is right. See, in Joseph's situation, he didn't know what was going to happen. He just made the right choice. The truth is, for us, sometimes we know what's going to happen, or we have some sense of what's going to happen. If I make the right choice, because we do this all the time, Pastor, if I make that choice, man, I could lose a friendship. Pastor, if I make that choice, I could lose the job. Pastor, if I make that choice, I'm going to be misrepresented. My reputation is going to be marred. I want you to hear this. At the end of the day, our choices reveal what or who we love and value the most. What and who we love and value the most. Do I have the integrity to do what's right when I know it's going to cost me something of value? I remember before I was married, I was dating this girl. No, it wasn't a great relationship. I had a friend of mine come up and he challenged me with it, and he goes, you know this isn't right. It's not good. You need to cut off the relationship. I'm like, Man, you're speaking foolish words right now, my friend. I don't know what is in your head. And took some time, and the Spirit of God just stirred my heart, confirmed that that was the case. Had somebody speak truth to me, and I broke off that relationship. Something I valued. Something that was enjoyable. And yet, it was like there's something greater in life than that. And I had to be willing to sacrifice that because there was something of greatest value. But remember, our integrity is doing what's right when I know it's going to cost me something of value. It cost Joseph everything. He lost his job. He lost his reputation. He was misrepresented. He was falsely accused. He was thrown in prison. And you know what's funny? Is in prison, what did he have? Couple things. He didn't have freedom. He didn't have all these things. He had the presence of God and his integrity. That's what he had. Because all of us, we think, well, you know, I want to do the right thing, and then God, like, parts the Red Sea. You know, God does something, he blesses me abundantly. Would you do the right thing if it cost you something? For years and years, Joseph was in prison for the choice that he made, but he was there with the presence of God and the reality of his integrity. It had greatest value. It's powerful, right? The gospel is about this. Jesus is the perfect model of integrity. Who he was and what he did was not determined by his circumstances, wasn't shaped by the people around him. It was shaped by his Father. He was falsely accused. He was scorned, mocked, shamed, eventually crucified, because there was something of greater value to seek out and accomplish than to cave to the will of the people. He looks at the Pharisees and he says, you bunch of whitewashed sepulchres. You know, sometimes I think we look at Jesus going, guys, let's just try to be better at it. You know, you got this thing all wrong. No, he's throwing it down, man. He's like a bunch of vipers and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that's my Jesus right there. Come on. But he did this, guys, listen. Not for himself. He's perfect in himself. He did it for you and I. To free us, to forgive us, to restore us, and to bring us hope.